How do you give feedback that actually builds a high-performing team? Welcome to the Art and Science of Difficult Conversations podcast. And in today's compilation episode, this is exactly what we're going to discuss. In the first segment, you'll hear a role play between Chris and one of our previous guests, Jovan Ganoué, where Jovan is giving performance feedback to his team member, Chris. In the next segment, Chris and I break down 5 practical steps you can use to give feedback that's clear, honest, and supportive. Let's dive in.
How do you build a team that gets things done? We've done role plays before on our podcast. We'd love to role play with you if you're open to it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do it.
So I'm happy to be the employee. I'll be your employee, Jovan. I'll push back a little bit, but let's imagine you're the business owner. You're the one that hired me to help you on a podcast. You helped me to build a podcast and run a podcast and co-host a podcast. And you brought me on because I've done good work in the past, and I started off doing okay, but now we're about 6 months in, and now I'm struggling. Now I'm late. I'm not hitting my goals. I'm just resistant. I'm very clearly overwhelmed with everything going on, and I'm just more resistant to everything moving forward, and I'm kind of just disengaged.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'd love to hear how you, as the boss, how you're going to approach this conversation with me to get me back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I get into the words, is it all right if I just share a little bit of just some perspective?
Sure, please. Yeah.
So
talk about
Yeah. So one of the things, again, I know I mentioned this earlier, but that helps with these kind of conversations is if you've already set expectations early in the relationship, that you're going to hold them accountable and that you're going to bring things up when there is a problem, and letting them know that this is not always a top down. It's, hey, I also want you to bring problems to my attention. And I bring that up early and often with people that I'm coaching or leading in a team of any kind. Very early on in our relationship, I'll let them know, hey, listen, you're on the team because I believe in you. Here's where we're going as an organization. Here's the values. I really feel you fit the culture. And I think together we're going to do some great work. And I believe you're going to grow in this environment. I'm going to grow. I will make mistakes. And, you're going to make mistakes too. That's okay. But we need to be able to talk about these things when they come up, so that way we can grow together. Because what I don't want is you feel friction and you feel tension. I feel friction and there's performance issues and we're not talking about it. That's not good for you. It's not good for me. So at some point, it's going to happen. It's not when. It's not if. Excuse me. It's not if. It's when. So when these things come up, either way, I want you to talk to me about it. And I also want you to know that I will address it with you personally, when these performance issues do come up. It's inevitable. So if I've shared that early, where I've created that culture of candor, I've created a space that they're going to make mistakes, that then helps lead into then any conversation that I've had. So that's I would say the first kind of almost role play, if you will, before the role play, right? Yep. Is kind of what I would be sharing with you. But now let's say what you said is true. So now we're diving in. So let's go. So Chris, how are you? It's good to get a chance to connect a little bit in our one-on-one.
Yeah, I'm all right. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm really excited to share some things with you that will probably be a little bit difficult to hear at first, and difficult for me to share because we've built a good relationship. But I'm sharing these things with you because ultimately I want you to succeed in your role here. And in the past, what I've seen from you is you deliver great work. You were open-minded. You seemed very much open to winning. Well, what I saw in the last couple of weeks is there were multiple conversations that you and I have had where I felt like you were a little resistant to some of the ideas and a little more disengaged. Specifically on Tuesday, there were 3 or 4 different ideas that I actually had shared with you. And you just kind of dismissed them. You didn't share why. You didn't share some of your own ideas. And so I really just want to check in on you. It's okay that it happened, but my concern is that maybe there's something going on. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. But I just want to check in and just kind of see how you're doing, because my concern is if things continue this way, it may actually cause, some friction. And ultimately it may hurt the quality of the podcast and to our viewers and our listeners. And I want to make sure that you're successful. Any insights you might be able to share just on what you're going through?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you said you value honesty, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna give it to you straight. It's just a lot. It's just a
Okay.
lot. All right. I want to do a good job. It's just you keep throwing stuff at me, and like it's hard to even know what's a priority, what I
Mm,
need to do first, because everything seems like the way you send me stuff. It's like I need this done. I need this done. I need that done. I need this done. All while holding up kind of my ongoing stuff and getting this podcast up and rolling and moving. And yeah, I don't know. Like it's just too much for one person, right? Like
yeah.
I'm not trying to do this stuff while I'm at home. I'm not trying to like do this in my off time or the weekends. So I don't know. It's just truthfully, you're just throwing a lot at me.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I did not realize that you felt that way. Can I ask, I'm just going to ask a follow-up question because I want to make sure I'm understanding,
Yeah.
what your root concern is. Cause it's from what I'm hearing you say, we've been moving pretty quickly and it's
Yeah.
been a lot for you to be able to process and handle your current workload in addition to, what I'm asking of you as well. And it's, maybe you're feeling a little extra pressure directly from me based on how I'm giving you the work and the pace at which we're moving. Is that a fair kind of assessment summary for how you're feeling right now?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I mean, yeah, I get that you've always said like you're okay with mistakes. You're not stressed about that, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem, on a day-to-day basis. Like I know that's what you're saying to me, but on a day-to-day basis, I don't feel that. I feel like I
Okay.
have to get it right.
Okay.
And you have these high expectations, like I got to get it right or else, essentially.
Okay. Is there anything else that you haven't shared yet that's concerning that maybe is underneath that? Because I know for me, sometimes maybe the first thing that we're sharing isn't always the full picture, but if there may be other things that you're uncomfortable sharing, the whole purpose of this conversation is that we can get everything out there and we can move forward with confidence. And I want to build a better relationship together so we can perform together, at the highest level. So we can talk then about how we can move forward. But is there anything else that is on your mind that you haven't shared yet?
I mean, at the end of the day, like I came on because I love what you wanted to do with the podcast. I love the idea of a podcast. I'm a big podcast guy myself, so I thought I'd be focusing on that. And then I'm just focusing on now. You got me doing all these other tasks, and I know maybe it's just the how life goes, right? Other duties is assigned by your manager, but I don't know. I thought I'd be doing more work on the actual podcast and recording and doing that stuff, and not all this other
Okay.
miscellaneous stuff.
Well, I tell you what, why don't I want to do a couple things and you let me know if you're okay with this. Let's schedule another conversation because I don't think it makes sense to have it right now where we can talk about the operations, right? We can really game plan, talk through your workload, talk through what you've got on your plate, and we can figure that out. I'm really confident in that. You've been showing, early on signs that you want to learn, you want to grow. It just sounds like the pace at
Yeah.
which we're doing things is difficult. Let me ask this of you though, for how we work together moving forward, right? It's really important to me, and I think to you as well, we build a great relationship and we can work together. So it sounds like you've been feeling this way for some time, but it didn't come up until I actually asked you about it, which I understand. You may not have wanted to for any number of reasons, and I'm okay with whatever those reasons are. But moving forward, what my expectation would be is that if you have a challenge or an issue or you're overwhelmed, especially if it's with me personally, that we have enough of a safe space and a trust that you can bring that to me early because I don't want it to fester and get worse over time. And then it leads to more friction. So moving forward, do you think if something like this happens again, you can bring it to my attention within that same week so we can address it right away and we can move forward together with that?
Yeah, I could try. I tried bringing this up before, but you
Okay.
kind of moved past it pretty quick. So I was like, all right, I guess it's not worth bringing up again.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will now that I'm more in tune, we've had this conversation, which, I brought up. I will make sure that I take detailed notes and I'm more clear on my end because really I do want to make sure that I'm listening and I'm receiving, what you're sharing. I know sometimes I'm an entrepreneur, I can move very quickly sometimes, but I do want to help
Yeah.
make sure that we're moving forward together. So on my end, I will make sure I lean in more. and listen to you better moving forward if you're open to making sure that you bring it up. And if you think I didn't listen, you can you can bring that up too, and help hold me accountable to what I've committed to you, as a leader. Is that fair?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll give it a shot. That's fair.
Awesome. Well, why don't we plan on revisiting this specific conversation in a month and we can just talk about this, that how things have improved. If we feel like things haven't changed or things haven't gotten better or they have gotten better, what's working? Because I see you as a long-term player within this team. I really think you could do extremely well with our podcast. I think we can take this podcast on a global scale, but based on your background and your experience. So I think it's important we prioritize this early in our relationship so that we can succeed long term. So we revisit this in a month and just talk about what's working and what's not.
All right. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being open to having the conversation. I know it's uncomfortable sometimes, but the more we have these conversations, I think the more easier it'll come and the more trust we're going to build. So thanks for taking the time, Chris, and being so open with me.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Also, I
Well, good riddance to you. Good riddance to you. Now.
good riddance. All right. Hey, good job handling that.
That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Nice. So
So
I'm
yeah, go ahead, Lucy. If I don't know if you want to share maybe any insights, I'm just happy to share some of the things that I do intentionally, but anything that you want to add in, all ears.
Yeah, maybe I would give the word first to the two of you, how it was from each of your perspectives. Maybe I would start with Chris. How was it for you to receive that type of conversation?
Um, no, I thought it was great. I thought it was good because you've done this a lot. You know what you're going to say and you've planned out how you're going to say it. So there's not a lot of
Yeah.
pauses. And I think there's a lot of power in that because it's demonstrating that you're in control of the conversation and yourself. If you just have a lot of or uhs, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Nobody's judging like somebody's speaking skills. It's really demonstrating how comfortable you are. And if you're uncomfortable, I'm not going to feel comfortable in the conversation
Yeah.
because I'm going to feel unsettled by you feeling unsettled. And so I think it's great that you knew what you were going to say, you knew how you were going to say it, and you planned it out and you were able to move through it pretty quickly and understand what's going on for me. And I appreciate that you didn't get defensive, which a lot of people do. They're like,
Yep.
no, you misread, you misunderstood. You took it on the chin. You said, you're right. My bad. I messed up. I'll work on that. We can work on that together. I want you to hold me accountable. That was a great way you said of phrasing that. I
Yeah.
want you to hold me accountable. And I think also reminding me and framing. You did a lot of good job of
Yeah.
framing, right?
Yep.
Setting the stage for what's happening, why you're saying it, what your expectations were of me, and why you believe in me, and why you think I can do a good job, as opposed to just why did you mess up? You're a failure. Stop this. But a lot of good framing, a lot of great stuff there.
Javon, how was it for you?
Yeah. I appreciate the acknowledgement, Chris. You've done a lot, planned it out. I'm at a point in my career where I don't even necessarily have to plan it as much because I really want to be in the moment with the person and the situation. And I'll share to the listeners that this is a really uncomfortable piece for you, right? You're a team leader. You avoid these conversations and it's not going to flow like it did for me. Because some people may hear me and go, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. Right. Well, I've done this, I don't know, thousands of times. Right. And so I can pivot and adjust. But early on, the more transparent and authentic and vulnerable you are with somebody, the more trust you build. So it's okay to say things that I did not necessarily say, but you could say it if it's genuine. Hey, I need to have a tough conversation with you. Honestly, it's really uncomfortable for me because I don't have all of what I want to say, but your relationship is too important for me not to say something.
Mm, yep.
And if you go look at, there's a great book, Crucial Conversations, it talks about, stating mutual purpose, right? Focusing on what's the common purpose, what's the common goal. I oftentimes like to use the example of a volleyball team, two on two volleyball. If you're 2-on-2, you would never, or you shouldn't put down the other player, right? Everything you're doing with those two players is to score points against the other team. So if I can help you feel, even though I'm coaching you or I'm giving you performance feedback, that we're on the same team, we were moving in the same direction. I don't
Yep.
have to have my words flow so naturally and smooth for it to have weight if I'm willing to be open, that it's uncomfortable for me, but that together we can do something together, right? And that we're on the same page.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. Even
And
when you gave feedback, I think it was also another great point was it was so concrete and specific, right? You
That's
didn't
so
say you're just
important.
disengaged. What's going on? Right? You said specifically what I was doing and what you noticed.
Yeah, that is crucial. I'll just say for me, if my wife comes to me, because listen, I've got an ego just like anybody else. I work on submitting it and getting it out of the way, and I think I do a decent job of that. But the people that you care about the most, sometimes it comes out the worst. And all she has to do is be vague. Hey, you weren't listening to me. Yes, I was. Hey, the other day I told you X, Y, and Z, and then but then you didn't do it. I can't do
Yep.
you when it's a fact that it's objective. That is so crucial, and I guess that's something crucial for your listeners. Like, it can't be just like you said, you're disengaged. It's got to be, hey, on Tuesday, I gave you 3 ideas. You turned them down, and you didn't give any more explanation of why.
Yeah.
It does a couple things. It tells you what the standard isn't, and it starts to help set the standard of what you're expecting. But it's also you can't make it up. You can't. Honestly, I probably talked too much. If you can say less, you have less room for the ego, because what happens is people are listening to combat you. You can do all the things that bring down the ego. You can do all the things that bring down the defensive walls of the person you're talking to. And I think that's really important. But people are still going to potentially get defensive, especially if this is the first time you're having these conversations. My wife and I are at a point, I just keep going to my wife and Tara, where I know she's about to have a tough conversation with me. And so I just take a deep breath. Okay. All right. There's something that, and more often than not, she's right. Don't tell her I said that. She can't listen to this podcast. But more often than not, she's right. And there's something that I was missing because I was going 100 miles an hour over here. And so early on, when you haven't had this conversation with this person, it may feel extremely uncomfortable. So it's okay
Yep.
you got to be specific and very objective and try to remove
Yep.
your emotion out of it, and recognize that there's always two sides to every story too. So when I'm coaching people, I always let them know there's always the thing that you see happen. There's the reason that you think, and then there's the root of the reason that actually is taking place. And more often than not, your assumptions that you're making are wrong about the
Mm.
why, and the why they didn't do it, why they didn't disengage. They disengaged because they don't care, they forgot, or they're going through a divorce and they're going through a really tough time and they're just overwhelmed because they can't handle the perk. Like, the why is as important, if not more important, than the action. And I think that's an evolution of leadership, because 20 years ago, the why didn't matter. You didn't hit your number, you didn't hit your mark, you showed up late. I don't care why.
Yeah.
I just care about performance. And in today's culture, you can't just care about performance. If you want performance, you need to care about the person. You don't have to be a life coach for them as a manager or team leader. You don't have to solve all their problems, but you do need to be aware of what they're going through so that you can push them right outside their comfort zone. I do think you need to do that, but it shouldn't be way up here at level 25 when they need to be at level 10. And you got to meet people where they
Hmm.
are, and you can't treat everybody the same. Right. So anyway, a lot there, but that role play was fun. There's a lot of fun doing
Yeah.
it too. So
Who's
Yeah.
Radical Candor? Kim Scott, I think her name is. Yeah, she writes about that in her book. Is the idea you have to know, like, it's gonna feel like you're a therapist for a little bit, and that's just part of the job. You have to know your people in order to care about them and help them do their best.
Mm.
yeah, that's a book I need to read. I've seen some of her content online and stuff like that, but and I know Netflix subscribes to Radical Candor, for better or
Mm.
worse. But yeah, I think
Yep.
it's so important.
Yeah, I also wanted to add your body language, I noticed during the conversation.
Yeah,
As Chris was talking, you were leaning in and you were really listening. So your whole body, also your tone of voice was calm and focused. I think that's very important also because sometimes we may be stressed out or frustrated and we are trying
yeah,
to tell them with the
yes,
words, but the body language and the tonality is a little bit off.
yeah.
And for a lot of leaders, what would you say would be some tips when they are in that judgmental state and they're frustrated that the employee is not performing or that they made a mistake? how would you suggest they shift into that state when they're able to listen?
Wow, that is a fantastic question, and I'm glad you observed some of those things and that came out because I wasn't even thinking about. But for me, I was just doing it what I always
Yeah.
do. But a couple things I share this all the time, and it comes to the root of servant leadership that it's not about you, right? Usually, people get frustrated because it's whatever the result is, it's coming back on them, right? They're not hitting their numbers, their project's going to miss a deadline, and so they feel pressure from above, which I totally understand that. But if you make it about you, that other person is going to make it about them. And it becomes a friction point that you will not get past.
Hmm.
So, one of the things physically, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this on your show, is take a deep breath. Because when you take a deep breath, it physically changes your body chemistry to relax and it slows you down and it slows your heart rate down. And so just doing that alone can help you kind of take that pause and take a step back. That's why I even mentioned earlier when my wife would say something and I knew what was coming, take a breath. But then I say this all the time is take the eyes off yourself and realize, ask yourself this question. Is this person a bad person? Is this person doing something on purpose to bother you and annoy you? Is that what you think? Because you probably don't think that if you think about it consciously, but you're acting as if it does. And so frustration happens when expectation doesn't meet reality. Expectation doesn't meet reality. So one of the thing, Jocko Willink, world famous book, Extreme Ownership, I start there. I start there. So what did I do? What could I do that could have prevented this or helped this? So in the Chris example here with the role play, and I didn't really necessarily communicate it this way, but I fell on the sword a couple times, right? Hell, hey, that's my fault. It's not always, but if we own it up front, hey, what am I seeing from Chris that maybe I could have avoided? Did I even set him up for did I give him the right expectations? Did I communicate clearly in writing form? Did I give him a project deadline? Like, did I even think about these things? So if I can start with taking an ownership first and go, what can I have done differently to solve the problem?
Yep.
We now go into solution seeking mode and we think about how can I serve and how can I help the person across the table versus I see this person as a problem. I want to see the person as a part of the solution that
Mhm.
we're in this together, right? Look at it going back to sports. If I was an outside back, I was a defender. I remember I made mistakes, along the way, right? That's always part of the journey. But I never saw myself as the problem. And I don't think the coaches ever did either. We were all on the same team. And so now frustrations still happen, especially when you've already talked about something with somebody and they still don't do it. And they're not following through. You can solution seek, dive deeper all day long. But the only reason you're frustrated is because you're not doing something to move it forward or potentially exit them if you need to, if we're that frustrated, we've had those kind of conversations. So yeah, body language, tone of voice, calm, all of that makes a difference to creating the right environment, to even have the right conversation. Because you can say the right things, and I can say, "Hey, I'm really happy to have you on the meeting," and but listen, you've been really messing up, right? Like it just
Yeah,
is different. So
absolutely. I also noticed you were using a lot of the championing language throughout the conversation. For example, I see you as a long term player. When somebody is not used to using that kind of language, what would be a guidance for them? How they can learn to use that supportive language?
yeah, well, sign up for a class with me, right? But I think it comes from a couple things. I think that's my brand, right? Building a culture of
Okay.
champions. People relate to that, whether you're an athlete or not. I think people like to be a part of something like winning cultures, right? There's a reason why people follow sports teams and never played sports. So I think that's an element. But a couple things, I think you got to get around people that talk that way, that think that way, read books that you're attracted to. I've mentioned a couple, like extreme ownership is one. But the more you can listen to other people, you can kind of model that. But for now, think for yourself, okay? If you're listening to this, think for yourself of an environment of something that you were really good at. It could have been the violin. It could have been honestly, it sounds funny, but I'm not joking. Video games, right? It could be you're a machine as a chef. Like I mean, you're the person your friends go to for advice on this topic, right? You've gotten really good at it. bring that confidence over into your professional career and speak with that level of authority and confidence. And it's okay to be unsure of yourself in that mode. I remember when I was first, building my first team, I was super uncomfortable, but I said, you know what? I'm responsible. So I'm going to assume our team's going to win. So I'm going to speak that way. And I'm going to learn this what I call now the language of victory, and just start to speak that way. It feels a little uncomfortable at first, but eventually it becomes a part of how you speak. And these are things that are now subconscious for me, but I've done it a lot. So hopefully that's couple of little things that
Yeah.
someone that maybe doesn't do this can take their past experiences and bring that like confidence in, to speak that victory into people. So I think it is so important. And only thing I don't think I share, but I think is really powerful too, is it's the skills are important, the personal growth is important, but the core of all of it is who you are as a leader, your character, your follow through, your genuine interest in helping them. That gives so much space for grace and mistakes that you make, that people will give you the benefit of the doubt, right? If they know you genuinely are a good person and you genuinely care, and if you're listening to this, you probably are wanting to get better. You're probably a pretty humble person if you're listening to this kind of podcast. That's my guess. And you're probably also very driven and you're very motivated. It's okay not to be good at this. It's okay. And so if you just start there, wherever you are, and then start doing it, it'll become like muscle memory, just like practicing a sport, just like practicing an instrument, just like dating, just like marriage, just like, all the things. And so just know that it's okay to be bad, and it's okay to actually share that you're not good at it until you do get good at it, but also know that you can make a big difference in your relationships and in your teams, if you're willing to do this. Because what's happening right now is if you're not having these kind of conversations, your team's disengaged. They're already thinking about going somewhere else. They're looking for leaders. People are looking to be led, period. Every single person is looking to be led. Even the top people that you learn from on podcasts, the top authors, they all have people they look for. And if you're not going to become that person, they're going to look for it somewhere else. That's just the reality. So you can embrace it and lean into it, or you can let people keep disengaging.
Love that. And I learned recently that mistakes aren't failures unless you don't learn from them.
It's a good one.
Javon, let's assume for some reason somebody skipped all of part 1 of this episode, came to this episode, fast forwarded to just this exact moment. What are 1 to 2 big takeaways you would have for them if they didn't hear anything else from this episode?
So for me, thinking from a team leader perspective, the number one most important thing is setting a plan for your own personal growth. Set a plan for your own personal growth. They're not just, I read sometimes. No, what are you reading? When are you reading? What podcast are you listening to? What are you working on right now? Who are you learning from? That's a huge one. Who are you learning from? Who's in your corner, right? Whether it's paid service or otherwise, but like if you don't have someone right now that you, as a team leader, especially, that is a leader above you, I don't mean hierarchy, but that's someone that's further down the road from you, that you could pick up the phone right now and call them for their perspective. If you have it inside your company, fantastic. But if you don't have that, there's a huge gap in your learning curve, because you can only get so much from a book, you can only get so much from a podcast, you only get so much from listening and binging information. At some point, you need somebody to kind of lean in and go, oh, based on your situation, here's some things to consider. Here's a book you should read right now. Here's a podcast you should listen to right now. So that personal growth aspect is crucial. And in my experience, I've worked with so many managing directors, C-suite, that do not do that. And then they wonder why. They have performance issues and team issues and morale issues and disengagement issues. And they think that just showing up for the corporate training once a year and showing up to and listening to a podcast here and there is enough. It is a big commitment, should be, if you're going to be responsible for people. And so personal growth is crucial.
Love it. And let's say they're like, you know what? I want to learn from Javon. I want myself, I want my team, I want everybody in my world to learn from Javon. How can they learn more? How can they reach out to you and find you?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So if you know the spelling of my name, I'm pretty Googleable. My name is SEO friendly with Javon Gondway. But my website, www.influential, leadershipskills.com. It has a lot of my background on, my perspectives, leadership frameworks, all that great stuff. And I do content on LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn is a great place to follow me for content. And I do a lot of leadership transformation, right? Coaching, workshops, working with organizations over the course of 3 to 6 months. Because I'm not just on one off. It's about transforming behaviors and transforming identities. Atomic Habits is a great book for that, but transforming identities so we become a better version of ourselves. And that's the core of what I do for individuals and for organizations is that transformation over time. So
Love it. Javon, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
absolutely.
Siobhan.
This was fantastic. I look forward to collaborating with you guys in the future and sharing your podcast more as well. This was amazing. Thank you so much.
How do you give feedback that lands and sticks and gets the results you want? Today, we'll talk about those 5 elements that really make feedback effective. Lucy and I have been either giving feedback or we've been coaching others to give feedback for quite a while. And so we've come up with, as we've kind of brainstormed and thought about this, we've come up with these 5 really important keys that every bit of feedback you give needs to have in order to have an impact. And so could you miss one of these things? Yeah, you could still have an effect. We're just saying that these are the 5 that if you have them together, you're going to really increase the probability of success with your feedback. Is that fair to say, Lucy?
I think so. And I would say if you don't have the time, if you're overwhelmed and busy like everybody else nowadays, and you don't have the time right now or the bandwidth to read the books, listen to our episode, because if you follow at least these 5 steps, it really increases the chances that your communication will be better, will be more effective, will be received better, and you will have more enjoyable moments in your work and in your life as a result. Who wouldn't want
Now,
that?
I want to be clear, set the framework first or the context. When we are talking about feedback in this context, we are talking about as if you are a manager giving feedback to your employee. I will say this, that this approach can work with any kind of situation. You could use it giving feedback up or sideways or to anybody. You just have to modify it a little bit, but the framework and the basic structure is still there. So let's jump into it before we really dive into it. Let me tell you all 5 so you don't think that we're just kind of holding out on you. So the 5 things 5 keys to success here are: number 1, you have to have a framework and a plan of how you're going to give that framework. You can't wing it. You have to know exactly what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. Secondly, you need to be concrete, be specific, and have data if necessary. Third, you want to be able to manage yourself. You got to be in a calm place if you want to get to that, be able to give that feedback. Number 4, timing and location is everything. They will make a big world of difference in terms of how the feedback is received. And the 5th one, you got to add an accountability structure. Just giving somebody feedback is only half the equation. You have to have another part where you have some sort of accountability follow up. So let's dive into it. Number 1, have a framework and have a plan of how to give that feedback. Now, there's so many different models out there. There's ABC model, SBI model, countless other models. Lucy, what model are you usually typically following?
I like the SBI feedback model, which says situation, describe what is the situation, give the context for that feedback. Then behavior, what is the behavior that you're observing, which helps with us when we are not giving assumptions. We are not saying, you are this way and I need you to be different. No, this is the observable, objective behavior that's being observed. You didn't fill out the form last time or twice this time, which comes together also give the data. You need to have data, so you provide specific observable behavior. Then the next step is for I, impact. What is the impact on you? What is the impact on the project? What is the impact on the team? What is the impact on anybody else who is involved? Which again is making it more objective rather than pointing fingers, but really owning when this happens, the impact on me is I need to then stay longer at work and work for 2 extra hours. Then I'm late for my family with my kids. I don't know. It could be. Or the impact is we are delayed. We're risking being delayed with the payroll. And then there's the impact on everybody else because they're getting paid one day later, which for some people can make a big difference. They could be upset, let's say, providing that type of feedback. What really is the impact? Which the impact on that when we provide feedback from this way, when we are saying this is the impact on me, this is the impact on the team, we are not blaming. It doesn't seem more as a blame. It's really sharing what is from our perspective. This is the impact. And then usually to follow that, what's coming up for you when you hear this? Is that also from your end, how this is showing up? Or so have a question, ask for more details, their perspective, or have a request. You know, there is a standard. We need to meet that standard. How can we partner together? What can we do together to get there? Something needs to change. What can we do together to change that? And then from that, collaborate. Be your
Yeah.
approach that you're using.
Well, I was just thinking as you were sharing that, I've seen that model so many times, and they call it the SBI model, but really it's the SBICRC model. Like, there's lots more things that happen after you talk about the impact.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the thing I use, I don't actually even have a name for it. I learned it in a training long ago, and it's very
Mhm.
similar to SBI. It's just 3 steps, but it's very straightforward. You just talk about what they did that's correct or incorrect, what the impact of that behavior is, and then what you want them to do differently in the future. Just those 3 steps. And then if it's a coaching conversation or you want to have a coaching conversation, like that's meant to be like you just walk by, let me give you this 30-second feedback. I need to tell you to do this differently. But if you're having
Yeah.
a longer conversation, then after you tell them the impact of that or the consequence of that behavior, then you ask them for their input. Have you noticed that? What's coming up for you? And then you talk about what are we going to do going forward. So it's very similar. You can kind of modify it however you need to, and you know
Exactly.
you could do it for positive feedback too. If Lucy, you just
Absolutely.
facilitated a workshop and you knocked it out of the park and you did an incredible job, I'm going to say, Lucy, in that workshop you just did, some of the activities you ran, you were able to get people who are introverted to share. You were able to get everybody's input together, and you really deliver an experience where everybody was learning. This is going to be something that's impactful for them, and they're going to take back to their work. I don't need to tell you to do anything differently because you just did it. So that's it. Just keep
Yeah.
doing those
You
things.
can ask me questions.
Yeah, I can ask you questions, but
Or you don't need
but yeah,
to.
it works
You
for
just can stop with SBI and that's it. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so you can obviously just use it for positive and negative feedback, but
Yeah.
if you're listening, you can see it doesn't even matter which one you use. They're very similar. All of them are very similar. They're all kind of
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
doing their thing, right? It's really about you got to know what you need to say. And so, and then part of that leads to the second one. You got to have specific data and be specific. When you're giving feedback, if you've ever heard, I need you to be more assertive or you need to stop being rude, right? Those kind of things we think are descriptive, but the problem is everybody interprets them differently.
It's more of a judgment rather than
It's a
description.
judgment.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so you might say, but I wasn't rude in that meeting. I thought I was just stating what I needed to say. I just was
Exactly.
saying my piece. So
I'm being honest.
I'm being honest. I'm not being rude. And so you need to focus on specific concrete behaviors, right? So thinking about instead of saying you were rude, saying, Lucy, in that meeting, you interrupted Tom multiple times while he was trying to answer a question, while he was trying to share. Right. That's the specific behavior that's very clear. There's
Mm.
no getting around that. Right. So when you're thinking about that, Lucy, when you're thinking about being concrete and specific, what else are you thinking about?
I would say it empowers the conversation in a way that it eliminates the gray area and misunderstanding. So it helps people to really get on the same page with what happened and what is the impact of that. And without
Mhm.
specific data, I know some leaders, they're uncomfortable sharing the specific negative feedback. They package it so well that the person, they thought they gave hints of the behavior, but the other person, without having the specific tangible data, they think they're just doing fine. So the specific data can provide really also the ground for accountability in the future too.
Right, right. And it takes it out of your personal judgment of you just don't
Absolutely.
like the way they're doing something into, no, you actually are doing this,
Yeah,
right? Like, and it's easier for people to wriggle out of or minimize something if you can't prove it, right? If you say, Lucy, you've been late multiple times over the past week. Well, when was I late?
yeah,
Just a couple of times. I think I was only late once. Like I can admit that I was late once. But if I have like specific data saying, hey, based on the clock in times, you were late last Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and yesterday, you can't wriggle out of that because I have data, and we don't even have to argue about
exactly.
the data. We can say this is the facts. That we're not going to argue about whether it's true or not. This is what happened.
True. Yeah. So it already moves the conversation forward rather than being stuck at, oh, that's not true. Give me the data. Give me the proof.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Which takes extra effort or might take extra effort on the leader's side to really be organized themselves. Or maybe have a Google document with each employee and put notes and
right.
feedback there. Because all of us, we can forget what we wanted to say, or so really be also diligent with our own and keeping track record.
Yeah. Although I guess
And
now
some
that's
cases. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, as we talk about this example, now I'm thinking, why did you let this go for so long if they were late for 4 times?
That's true too, yes. But it can happen. So let's say if you haven't
Yeah.
had those conversations before, this is the podcast for you.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
start tracking it. Create that, get a notebook or a Google document on your computer or some file where you can put your notes. Of
Right,
course, keep them private.
right, right, right. And I think that's also helpful to even for you as a manager to conceptualize, is this important enough for me to give this feedback?
Yeah,
You know, if I like love black pen ink, but you keep writing in blue pen ink, is it really that important that I'm writing all this
it's
down?
very
As I'm
much.
writing it down and thinking about the impact, I'm like, actually, it doesn't really matter. It's annoying. Like I just like black pen ink better, but it might not be that important. And so maybe you don't need to give feedback after all.
It also makes me think when we write things down, another benefit, it could be looking at the balancing positive and negative feedback
Mm, yeah,
and intentionally see
yeah,
if you can find also things that you can give positive feedback on.
mm, yeah. I think that's fair
Because
for sure.
just if the employee only gets the negative feedback, what could be the impact on that employee?
Yeah, this is making me think. A side note: what do you think about the feedback sandwich?
Could work in some situations. Let's say when there's positive, negative, positive. It could be tricky for those leaders that are so super nice. They sandwich it
Mm,
so well
yeah,
that the person leaves away from that feeling, they're doing fine. Yeah, there were some small things, but it really doesn't matter because there's so many other things they're doing well. So I
yeah,
see the
yeah, yeah,
possible risk in that.
yeah. I'm not a
What
fan
could,
of it.
mm, yeah.
I heard this analogy a long time ago, and it's stuck with me ever since. That when you're eating a sandwich, you're not
Mhm.
eating a bologna bread sandwich. You're eating a bologna sandwich, right? It's the middle part that's really the most
Good one.
important. And
Yes,
by doing that, you risk diluting the message of what you're
exactly.
trying to send if you're too nice. Or if you have an employee that maybe you weren't nice, maybe you were very straightforward and did everything the way you were supposed to, but the employee just heard the good thing at the end and said, "You know what? I
Yeah,
guess I'm doing pretty well. This is great.
exactly.
Got some stuff to
So
work on, but yeah, I'm knocking it out of the park."
that could be tricky. So maybe
So
balancing it out, give clear positive feedback, and then find times to also for constructive feedback when necessary.
yeah, I had an employee when I um, worked with her. Like when we started, I asked her, "How do you like to receive feedback?" She actually requested the feedback sandwich. She's like, "I actually like positive, negative feedback, positive." And I talked to her about it. I said, "Listen, I'm happy to give you positive feedback with that critical feedback. That makes sense. I'm not opposed to that. I don't think this sandwich works the way you want it to." And we talked about like why she wanted it that way and all reasonable things, reasons why she wanted it that way. So I don't want to discount like her reasonings for it. So we were able to agree, let's do this positive and negative at the same time. It's never going to be all negative. It's going to be, a balance, and which I agreed with. It's fine to do a balance.
Yeah.
So,
And
but having that conversation,
what I love about your approach, really also getting on the same page and getting an agreement about and permission to provide the feedback and what kind of feedback works for them.
yeah,
That could be very empowering for the employees. So they already know, yeah, there's going to be feedback. And that feedback, if we create that safety, that the feedback is not you are a horrible employee and you're doomed forever, or you will never get a promotion if you make one mistake. But this feedback, this constructive feedback is my way of supporting you because I want you to be successful.
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
So really also making sure that the perception of the feedback, that we position it in a way as this is a way of support, not a punishment.
right. And speaking of how we're packaging that feedback leads into our next point, which is managing yourself. And this is actually the reason why we're even doing this is because that last podcast recording we did, we went to a tangent a little bit about there's often a lot of people who are really nice. They don't want to give too critical of feedback because they had a lot of critical managers themselves, so they don't want to repeat that. Fair. And so now they are stuck in I want to be nice, but I still need to give the feedback that gets things done. And so with that, this is what you really are passionate about. What are you thinking about in terms of managing ourselves and reframing how we even think about feedback?
That reframe can be really helpful looking at when somebody's value is being a kind person. I want to be kind, empathetic person towards others. And that's the leader I want to be. I really want to ask question and listen and be kind because I don't want to be like my previous leader who was really harsh with everybody. And that's why I left the company. I had clients telling me that. Now they're faced with, yeah, but this employee, they are not really getting my feedback. And I feel I need to be telling them the things that I don't want to say because I still want to have a good relationship. I still want to be a nice person. I don't want to be mean. And I feel if I am afraid, if I tell them that, it's going to be like I'm being mean to them. So we really explore what is the impact if the employee doesn't get the feedback. What are the possible consequences of that? Well, the problem never gets fixed. The leader might get additional work on their plate, especially if they're already overwhelmed. So it can lead
Mm-hmm.
to their even burnout down the road, possibly being resentful and additional stress because they know they should have the conversations, but they are avoiding it. So the discomfort, emotional cost on their well-being, cost on for the company, maybe increased mistakes can have impact on other departments in the company or the projects, could be financial impacts, and also the impact on the growth of the person. Well, if they feel they or think they are doing great, there's nothing wrong, they will never be motivated, incentivized to grow or change. And so is that really helping? Is that being kind to them? Really? Or
Mm.
would that really actually support them if they receive that feedback so they can change? One of my recent sessions was the person was worried if she gives the person feedback, unless something changes, he's not going to get the next contract. And she didn't want to give him the feedback. And then she realized, well, if he gets the feedback, then yes, he might quit right away. And yeah, then we get somebody else. Or if he gets the feedback and then he really wants to keep that job, that gig, that project going for another contract, then it can motivate him to change. And all of us can benefit. And he will have the opportunity to continue having income through our company. So she realized, well, if I really want to serve him and support him, which I really want, I need to give him the feedback, even though it's uncomfortable for me.
Love that insight.
And so really reframing that
Yeah.
for ourselves. Is that being kind to them when we are keeping them in the dark in a way?
Right. Right.
Or is it
Yeah.
robbing them from the opportunity to grow?
That's a powerful reframe. I think that's absolutely right. I think we're trying to protect people from
Mhm.
certain things, but really we're trying to protect ourselves, right, from any potential negative reactions.
Mhm. So it's about also preparing ourselves emotionally
Yeah.
for, okay, what if they get frustrated? Okay, so how do I keep myself calm while they're going through the emotions? And they have the right to feel however they are feeling.
That's
How
right.
can we reaffirm them that this is because we want to support them and have
Yeah.
that trusting relationship?
Right. Right. Yeah. It's not our job to manage other people's emotions.
Exactly. And so that also the distinction, what is my responsibility? Am I responsible for their emotions, or am I responsible just for my own right now and managing my own so I can stay calm, even when it's uncomfortable, so I can stay centered and really say what I need to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I don't have anything to add to that. I think that makes sense.
So I think then we can go to the next point.
Yeah. Timing and location is everything. I think obviously location, you want to give feedback in a place. I think if a lot of people are taught give praises in public, criticisms in private. I think that's fair. I think that's what the kind of team dynamic you want to create is you don't want to be giving this really, you can give positive feedback in public, go for it. You want to give critical feedback or constructive feedback in private because there's a lot of emotions and you don't want to get people defensive about it. You want them to be able to listen, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's very urgent that you give that specific 30-second feedback, right? Like a safety issue
Yeah.
or something that's really dangerous, you need to give that feedback immediately.
Right
Don't worry
away.
about everybody else. But outside of that, talk about that stuff privately so you don't have to worry about people's emotions and you won't be interrupted. And timing, we were talking about timing ahead of this because we agree timing is everything, right? So when you think about feedback, giving specific feedback, what are you thinking about in terms of how soon to give that feedback?
If something happens within the weekend, we have weekly one-on-ones, one-to-ones, I would say that could be an opportunity to provide regular feedback. What's going well? What's working well? What might use some tweaks? What might need to change? So giving regular feedback in those one-to-one meetings could be beneficial. Again, if that's safety issue, as soon as possible.
Mm,
You mentioned a great example if somebody's giving a workshop for the full day when we're preparing for this before recording. True. If they're exhausted at the end of the day, they might not be in the right mental space to receive
right.
a comprehensive feedback on how the workshop went.
Yeah.
So that might not be the best timing and space for that. So also really making sure that the other person is also in that right space and they do have the time, that you have the time for that feedback. It's not
Right.
like in the hallway, you give them feedback when people can pass by, but really having a private space. There was one thing, maybe you saw me making a face because that reminded me when you were sharing, give positive feedback publicly, negative constructive feedback privately. For some people, even the positive public feedback could be triggering for them, especially if they're
Mhm.
very introverted. It might create
Yeah.
very uncomfortable feelings in them.
Great point. Fair point. That's fair.
So that could be to your point previously, really when you have your team, have the conversation how they like to receive feedback, even a positive feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are-
Absolutely.
Do they love to be acknowledged in front of others? Some people, yes, please, anytime. Some people, no, really, I would love to hear the positive feedback, but let's keep it in our meetings, please. Because I
Mhm.
really don't want, I feel very uncomfortable being on the spotlight.
Yeah. I think that's worth another discussion because then you risk by not even acknowledging it in public, you risk other people saying, "Well, why doesn't Lucy acknowledge Chris's good work?"
Mm,
Like,
that's a
if
good
I'm
one
if
for the
I'm
team environment.
right, so like I think that gets into like that hard part of like team dynamics is
Yes,
yes, that makes I agree with like yeah, it makes sense. Let's
on the
let's have
personal level.
if
Yeah,
yeah, if you want to be personal, let's have it one on one. Let's talk about I'll save it for that. It becomes a little bit hard now. Like, what kind of tone are you setting for the rest of the team? And so then I would have that conversation. It's like I'd like to still acknowledge that you did this.
yes,
We don't have to dwell on it. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. What's a good way I can do that without kind of putting you out?
fantastic. Love it. Kind of getting an
So
agreement for what works for everybody, what's motivating for
yeah,
them. And
exactly.
the
But yeah,
feedback.
I think there's also a risk if you don't acknowledge in public, right? Maybe
Great
not giving the
point. I
feedback, but
agree.
you should
Yes,
still acknowledge, right?
great point. Yes.
So the last thing is adding accountability structures. I think this is the one that I think a lot of people miss. And even if they don't want to miss it, they don't know how to do it. And so it's really thinking about it's not adding in accountability measures is really vital. Nobody disagrees with like having accountability. Everybody, there's plenty of trainings and workshops on how to increase accountability. And adding in accountability measures after the fact is very hard. It's very difficult because life gets in the way. And so, my favorite question when I ask this or when I coach anybody to do this is as soon as you've come up with a plan of what's the next step, you're going to do this, or we all agree you're going to do this next step. The question I have everybody ask is, what do you want to do if it doesn't work? What do you think we should
Okay.
do if that doesn't work? Whatever
Mm,
variation of that is, it doesn't really matter. It's just you want to talk ahead of time. What happens? Right. And so I've
okay.
had a leader ask or feel hesitant of asking that because they asked, aren't we like setting them up for failure or aren't we assuming they're going to fail at this? And the answer is no, right? The answer is you are just assuming something might get in the way. It might be they
Okay.
just don't do it, which is possible. Let's talk about like what happens if you just don't do it. Maybe we have to go to HR or life gets in the way, right? Like maybe there's a lot of personal things going on that prevent you from doing this. What do you want to do? How do you want to address this? And so coming up with that collaboratively ahead of time can help you create that accountability measure. Like, okay, well, let's check in 2 weeks and see how things are going. Or I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know if I can really make it. Can we check in next week to make sure I'm on track here? But talking about it right then and there while it's still fresh and you've got an agreement on the next step, that can really
Absolutely.
solve a lot of headaches ahead of time. But what
I
it,
agree.
what's your way of adding accountability structures?
I agree. Agreeing on the next steps. Often it could be even so having them come up with the next steps rather than the leader saying, I think you should do this, 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 to get a buy-in from the person and which is increased accountability. What is possible? What do you think could be the next steps? And having them think things through and maybe asking them what do you think could get in the way? What would be the support for you to or steps to prevent this getting in the way? Or when that gets in the way, what would be the steps to address that? And plan for okay, scenario one, scenario two if needed. And again, figure out okay, when do we need next? The next step for us, our conversation. Where do we review?
Mm,
Could be having a structure when we meet next. I would love to know first what worked well. What do you want to celebrate? Let's
mm,
celebrate
mhm.
first, start on a positive note, and then let's explore anything that got in the way. How can we, what kind of support do you need to
Yeah.
move forward?
Yeah, the ongoing follow-up. I think that's key,
Yeah.
right? I think that's why I think project management is one of those skills that every leader needs to have to some degree.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't need a certification, but you need to know how to manage a project, which is all of this. Everything we talked about is how do you manage that project? How do you set up milestones and how do you set in regular check-ins?
Hmm.
I think that's key. I think that's a great point is how do you continually follow up and celebrate the successes and things that need to be course corrected along the way. Right, not just waiting for, "Let's talk about this next year at your
Yeah.
performance review."
Exactly. Well, I gave you the feedback, so now you should know what to do.
Yeah, now you just do it, right.
Exactly.
One scenario I'm wondering, Lucy, this comes up, before is, a leader is in a meeting, and a leader from a different team, maybe a different VP, comes up to me and says let's say you report to me and says, "Hey, Chris, Lucy did this in a meeting. It was really messed up or, really inappropriate, whatever." So essentially implying that I need to give you feedback about something that this other VP or this other leader saw in a meeting. How do you approach that? Or how do you kind of navigate that?
That's a tricky one. Depending on the relationship and among That's a good question. I would say, again, looking at is this really important? Having the feedback first with the VP, seeing, really understanding what happened, getting the data,
Mhm.
and then using the, let's say, SBI to provide that this is the situation, this is the meeting, this is the behavior that's been observed, it's the impact. What can we do? What's going on? What's your perspective on that? What is your side of the story? This is what I've heard. I want to also know your side of the story of the
Mm,
situation and see how can we figure this out because we need to all work together. And what would be the next steps? Do you want to talk directly? Is there any change needed? Is the feedback does it?
That's fair.
How would you approach this?
I've had the leaders, or I've always told leaders, don't give that feedback
Hmm.
because you weren't there. You don't know really what was happening. But I think, like you, I would ask that VP or the other leader, anybody, I would just
Yeah.
get more details. Like, can you describe
Hmm.
more what happened? If they really feel bold, they can also ask the other leader, that sounds like it was really terrible or really difficult. That's
Yeah.
tough. What did they say when you gave them that feedback? And then you're basically implying that they should have given that feedback because they saw it directly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's weird to be put in that position
Difficult to
and
navigate. Yeah.
difficult to navigate. I'd say just ask like, what do you want me to do with this information? Because I wasn't there, so how could I give this feedback?
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
always find it weird. How can you give feedback that you weren't there to see? Unless it was so detailed and you like have a very clear idea what happened. But a lot of times it's again, look, most people are giving you that secondhand knowledge of like, hey, this person was rude during that meeting. But what does that mean? And how often did it happen?
Exactly.
And how big was it? Like, or that person was unprofessional. Like I need more
A lot of feedback.
details.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Yes.
need like details that'll help me because
Yeah.
otherwise I can't give that feedback. Even if I wanted to, even if I was like, even if I agreed this person shouldn't be unprofessional. What do they need to do differently? I have no idea what to tell them.
It can be tricky and it depends on the relationship we have. Some people are more comfortable and the specific details. Sometimes it is important that the person, let's say if they were giving a workshop and in that workshop some things happened and maybe the VP will never interact with them ever again. Yeah, the behavior could be concerning for the overall performance of that person.
Right.
So that we gather data, and that could be part of that conversation. And of course, make sure that we gather data from them, what's happened for them from their perspective, and not siding with anybody, but really being more of that curious, non judgmental state. I want to know what happened. I'm here to support you. What was your
Mm,
side of the story?
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So there we have it. We have those 5 big key strategies. Number 1, have a framework or a plan of how to give that feedback. Number 2, be concrete and have the data if necessary. Number 3, manage yourself, your own expectations, your own emotions, your own frame, how you're even framing that feedback to yourself. Number 4, recognize that timing and place is everything. So get the right timing, get the right place. And then 5, add accountability structures. Find the way to make sure you're holding them accountable because I don't know, it's hard for people to hold themselves accountable. Like how many people create New Year's goals and don't follow through on them,
It's
you
one of the
know?
biggest obstacles and challenges, yeah. And
Yeah,
also set the boundary possibly. If this doesn't happen, if
exactly.
this doesn't change, it could be part of
Right,
the accountability conversation, really setting the boundary, sharing the consequences.
right, exactly. So that's it. There we have it. Those 5 things. I think those are the keys that have always helped me when I'm giving feedback to make sure the feedback goes over well. Like Lucy mentioned before, they're not always gonna be happy with that feedback, right? But that's not the goal, right?
Yeah.
If you are telling them all the things they've done wrong, I don't know, I'd basically be like, I'm super happy you told me all this. Like most people would feel some sort of way about it, even if they're like
True.
glad to get feedback and move in a positive
Yeah.
direction. Still doesn't feel great to everybody.
No,
So it's all really about how do you get the results you need? How do you move things forward and be kind and clear and compassionate by giving that feedback.
absolutely. And I would say be kind also long term rather than kind at the moment. Well, for now, let's just feel good for this today.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
is that a strategically being kind, strategically long term for that person? Is that kindness
Absolutely.
really kindness?
Yeah.
So checking in with ourselves.
So so there you have it. A little bit different than our regular episodes, only because we don't do a role play, because we've been giving you examples all along. So, but let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Either email us or comments and let us know below. Did we miss something? Are we wrong? Do you feel like we just need to be more direct? And we talk about this all the time. Is it depends a lot on the relationship too. Some of the bosses I've had that I've been with them for 4 years or more, we get to a pretty good rhythm where they can just tell me what's up and
Yeah.
I understand. I know needs to happen next. We don't need to have a long sit down discussion about like what the next steps are because we've already gone through that. We have a good sense of like a good flow of what happens next. But yeah, if you're still building that routine or if you're still trying to figure things out, then yeah, it might take a little bit more time for sure. But
And if you are dealing with a situation at work right now and you have some concerns about giving that feedback, let us know. Email us, message us. We can role play that scenario for you from the side of